If you're an athlete building a personal brand and you don't know who you're gonna be in the future, you're absolutely in today's video, I'm gonna show you an exercise that's gonna tell you who you are and where you're gonna go. So this exercise is called the Ideal Future Self Exercise, or IFS for short. And this exercise is what helped me get really clear on who my future self was going to be and how I was gonna get there. As we create the future self, it becomes an amazing filter for all the things that we do in life. So I've got my trusty whiteboard with me. So if we have the Ideal Future Self, or IFS, this is an amazing filter for perfect future and, of course, opportunities. And as opportunities start to come through here, you're going to discover that only one or two are going to make it through this Ideal Future Self filter, because the Ideal Future Self filter is what is going to help this perfect future align with the ideal future self. Anything that's not in line with this ideal future self is something that you do not want to be doing, and you will find yourself often in these moments being in a work situation, being in a relationship with somebody, or hanging around friends that your ideal future self would go, probably not. So let's hop into what that ideal future self exercise actually looks like. So whether you'd like to call it an exercise or a meditation, or for some of you, this might even be a prayer of sorts, this exercise has 3 different levels to it. So we have the internal level, which is going to be the observation. The next level, which is going to be the self-talk. And the third level is going to be the others talk. And this will make more sense as we, they, she, own. I didn't even finish the observation word. So the first part of the exercise is actually putting yourself in an environment with your ideal future self. You can also say the 70-year-old version of yourself, the 80-year-old version of yourself. It's whatever that perfect ideal future self is at whatever age. Some people see a younger version, some people see a older version. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase half of this just so we can make some notes about it and I can show you what this means. So in the observation phase, what we're going to do is we're going to have, this is where you have a setting. And what we want to see in the setting is we want to see the ideal future self, and we want to see others around them. So the ideal future self is surrounded by others. So whether you want to actually visualize it as like, I don't have any hair, so that's cool. And then this one, and we got like partner maybe, and some person with spiky hair, and this other person, whatever that situation looks like. For me, this setting is actually family farm. And it's just a piece of property in the Pacific Northwest that my family and I grew up on. And so in this family farm, I imagine myself surrounded by my partner, my wife, and of course, a bunch of really close friends and colleagues around me. And what that's going to do is that's going to put me in the mindset of starting to just observe what's going on. And I want to observe not only how my ideal future self is acting, but I also want to observe how my ideal future self, how he's interacting with the people around him. And always remember, you are looking at that person, not as if it's you, but if it's a third person perspective. So that's a key piece of this exercise. Some fundamental questions you might want to ask yourself during this first observation phase is, what is the setting that your ideal future self is in? Who are the people that surround your ideal future self? What is that ideal future self wearing, and what is the body language of that ideal future self? You also might want to consider the interactions between the people around your ideal future self. It was really helpful for me when I was originally going through this exercise many years ago to actually see the interactions of not my ideal future self, but the people around, because you can often gather a lot of things from how people interact with each other. And for me, it was, hey, those are the types of people that I want to surround myself with because they're communicating in a positive, constructive way, and they're working together and talking about things that they are building. So the second piece of this is self-talk. So now we get into this second sphere here, and self-talk is all about a conversation. And this conversation occurs with you and your ideal future self. And you want to consider things that are values So you can ask your ideal future self, what do you value? Who are the people that surround? So who are people? And perhaps something like, what is the impact that you're leaving on the world? So impact. And I'll leave a link down in the description box below where you can go to my website and download the entire exercise for yourself. It's a wonderful piece of kit as you are building your personal brand, and it's a wonderful place to start. Now, you may not get along straight away with that ideal future self because you're not them yet, and you may find that this ideal future self is incredibly inspiring. That's how I found it. I found it incredibly inspiring to talk to that person. I found it incredibly humbling in many ways, and it gave me perspective on how long I have to get to my big picture goals, and of course, the types of things that I'm going to need to change in my current life in order to be and become that person. All right, now the third piece of this exercise is a very cool one, and this is about the others talk. So circle it here. So the others talk is all about another conversation. This time, can't spell, it's you and others. What do you know? Or the other people around them. Things that you want to ask them are, how do you perceive this person? I before E, E after I, don't remember. Anyway, spelling. How do you perceive this person? What impact have they had on your life? How do they treat others? And questions like that give you a really good sense of how that ideal future self actually interacts with other people. The reason we do that at all three different levels, the observational, the personal one-on-one, and then sort of the third person of, hey, who is this person from a different perspective? You really get a holistic view of your own judgments of the situation, the first person judgment, and then of course a third party judgment as well. And this will give you a really good holistic rounded view of who this ideal future self is. For this exercise, I would strongly recommend taking about 2 to 3 hours to sit down, take away distractions, and really focus on who this ideal future self is. It's going to give you so much ROI on that time spent in the exercise, meditating or writing down notes about who that person is. I've had a couple clients now go through this entire process either with me or on their own, and it has been absolutely life-changing for them, which is really, really cool, and as it has been for me. And so what I would strongly recommend is 2 to 3 hours, and then what you want to do is create a character sheet or a character profile card, if you will, which we're going to go over just now. Building your character sheet is a key part of the process because it's really going to help you narrow down and focus the core elements of who this ideal future self is. For me, I think it's really helpful to put it up on your wall next to your office or in your bedroom so that you can constantly reference it when you're going through a transition moment in your life, or even deciding what platform to use for social media in building your brand. And it's going to give you a really good idea of who that North Star is. Once you know that North Star, as we spoke about in the beginning of the video, you're going to have a really good filter to discover, hey, this move is actually going to be better than this move, or if the path splits somewhere, you're going to know what direction to go in. So without further ado, the ideal future self character sheet. So this is what it can look like. And obviously you can do it on a whiteboard in your room or in your office, but I would recommend putting it into a Canva sheet or something that almost looks like a CV. So there's a couple different things that we want to focus on. So mission, purpose, and vision statements. 2, which is ideal day. So this is basically in the ideal future self's day, what do they do? Do they get up early and go work out? Are they a late sleeper and they have a chill early morning? What does that ideal day look like? Number 3 is who they serve. Now this can also be in conjunction with the ideal customer profile or ideal audience member exercise, which is also really cool. Number 4 is how you operate. I think there's only one P there. Operate. how you operate in the world. So a short description of how your ideal future self actually interacts with the world around them. Very, very important piece because it has to do with mannerism. It has to do with the way that they communicate with other people, etc. So number 5, life partner description. Now, this is awesome if you don't have a partner. If you do have a partner, feel free to describe them or feel free to describe their ideal future self once they've gone through the exercise as well. Number 6 is going to be values. So I'd stay somewhere between 5 and 8 kind of core values. And then if you want 10 to 15 total of other, if there's an extra little bit of list that you're like, hey, these are tangentially really important to me, but 5 to 8 is your core values that you're going to start to communicate with social media, with your writing, with your video, and things like that. Number 7 is going to be key relationships. So this is friends, family. Who are those people and what is their role in your life? And number 8, big achievements. So what I would strongly recommend here is not only what is that achievement, you get what I'm spelling anyway, and the sacrifices. The sacrifices is very important because you can identify what are the sacrifices that it actually took to get there. And that's a really important framing because as you're making decisions throughout your life, there are going to be things that you're going to have to sacrifice, whether it's a low night of sleep or you can't drink for 6 months or you can't go out and party with your friends or whatever that sacrifice is, or time with your spouse to go achieve a work goal, things like that are going to make it much easier to frame, hey, this ideal future self has this particular outcome, but it took these things that they had to sacrifice in order to get there. So as you look at this ideal character sheet, you can put it into the format of a giant Pokemon card if you wanted to. You can also put it in the format of a sports card or even a slide deck. So it could be really helpful for some of you to put 8 different slides, or maybe 9 slides if you have a title or like an AI generated older version of you that looks all jacked and ripped if you're into that kind of thing. And then you put 8 different slides through on Canva or a presentation of some sort and actually go in and describe each one of these. Mission, purpose, and vision statements, very, very important. Obviously, they're all really important, but I would say if you're gonna nail the really big ones are mission, purpose, vision, who you serve, how you operate in the world, life partner, because that makes more of a difference than most people realize, your values, key relationships, and that's kind of the big ones. Yes, big achievements, but big achievements and ideal days tend to ebb and flow for a lot of people. Even in the span of me working with a client for a year, those 2 things can actually look very different, surprisingly enough, whereas these kind of core 6 are the ones that you really want to focus on. But I like to put the ideal day and the big achievements in there because I do think it adds a little more reality to the well-roundedness of a presentation or a character sheet like this. Now, let's circle back to what I first said about it being a filter. There's 2 key questions that you might ask yourself. So if you have your ideal future self character sheet or CS, so you have it here and you are sitting right here and there is a massive question mark because you have a decision to make. So this decision, the first question you want to ask yourself is this decision going to take me closer to or further from this ideal future self? It simplifies most decisions in life. And if I'm going to go out with a group of friends like my triathlon crew and they're all drinking or everybody in the bar is drinking and I say, who is my ideal future self? And again, the ideal future self isn't at least mine isn't a judgmental person. So this is not a commentary on whether you should drink or not. It's simply in my own life and for my own ideal future self, is this decision to drink going to take me closer to or further from that goal? With my family history and things like that, it's taking me way further from my goal. So I choose not to do it. So I'm getting closer to that ideal future self. The next one you want to ask yourself, or the final one, is if you're still having trouble, if you can't decide, you're like, oh, I think actually this decision takes me, maybe it's an A or a B decision. It's what would ideal future self do? Pretty simple, right? Once you have a really concrete understanding of who that ideal future self is, it makes it very easy to spend the rest of your life in pursuit of becoming that person. Again, if you're interested in the ideal future self exercise, I'll leave a link to download the PDF down below. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. See you guys in the next one. Stay dangerous.